how I am going to fix the Marvels, which I know implies it's broken, because it is. Well, it's not the feminist propaganda train wreck I thought it would be. The Marvels plot feels like it's being held together by duct tape. Before I fly on into this movie though, I'm warning you all now that I am spoiling this movie rotten. Here is your final spoiler warning in 3, 2, 1. Okay, if you're still with me here, I have 3 major changes that will address the Marvel's shortcomings without heavily altering the movie's structure. And if you like what you see here, go ahead and smash that subscribe button and join the Budster Brown squad. Change number 1 is to make Darbin a compelling and threatening villain. The biggest complaint I see coming out of this movie is that Darbin is debatably the worst MCU villain of all time, which is saying a lot if you look at the MCU's entire rogues gallery. In the base film, Darbin is the most stock villain that you could possibly imagine. She has little to no screen presence, coming off more like space Kamala Harris than the female Ronan the Accuser that she was meant to be. She has a generic manufactured motivation that comes off as unique as it is compelling, which, believe me, it's neither. That being said, I feel that she's only a couple tweaks away from becoming a competent villain, maybe even a great one. There is a scene during the second act of the movie where Darbin narrates a 30-second flashback to the Skrull King about her beef with Captain Marvel. In her haste to defeat a dangerous AI program, Captain Marvel destroyed the ecosystem of Darbin's Kree planet. This scene is executed terribly, feeling totally uninspired and forced. However, it has a lot of potential. Instead of weirdly placing it in the second act, have this scene replace the boring relic discovery scene as the cold open of the movie. Get rid of that funky narration and flesh the scene out. Make it reminiscent of the opening scene from Batman v Superman, where Bruce Wayne witnesses Metropolis's destruction at the hands of Superman and Zod's fight. Spend just 2 to 3 minutes establishing the Kree's way of life before a bright flash of light tears through the city and starts causing massive damage. Have audiences assume that the main villain is the one causing all this ruckus, only for Darbin to realize that Captain Marvel is the one behind all the devastation. As Captain Marvel flies off-world, Darbin is left in a war-torn planet filled with debris and chaos, only accompanied by the sounds of fire and collapsing buildings. Cue the Marvel logo. Imagine that as the cold open. It instantly sets up Darbin as a compelling character and puts Captain Marvel's actions into question. While my new opening scene makes for a great character introduction for Darbin, it doesn't showcase what she offers as a villain. The base movie's first scene with her as an antagonist is actually not bad on paper, but surprise, surprise, lacks in execution. Captain Marvel breaks into Darbin's spaceship where Miss Marvel and Monica are being held at gunpoint. Carol and Darbin have a brief interaction before eventually getting separated. This scene doesn't work for 2 reasons. Number 1 is that Darbin has no screen presence whatsoever. To solve the first issue, we're going to have to redesign Darbin's character just a little bit. It's clear that she took some notes on Ronan the Accuser from Guardians of the Galaxy 1, and I think we need to go for that look even more. Have her wear a shadowy hood with dark black makeup surrounding her glowing purple eyes, complementing her pale blue skin. Have her be tall, broad, muscular. Make her physicality in line with the female Kryptonian from Man of Steel. Change her voice to be distorted and modulating, having an attitude that's calmer and more collected, as opposed to the screaming maniac we got in the base film. These are all simple changes that would breathe life into the character. Number 2 is that the dialogue and tone is just way too casual and weightless. Craft the scene in a way that gives Darbin the clear mental edge over Captain Marvel. A scene I would look to for inspiration is Wolverine and Stryker's first interaction in X-Men 2. In that scene, Wolverine doesn't quite remember Stryker, but he knows that something happened between them. Stryker, on the other hand, knows everything about Wolverine and uses that information to toy with him. Give Captain Marvel something to fear. Have Darbin be a physical reminder of the mistakes that Captain Marvel made, with Darben's physical appearance contrasting heavily with herself at the beginning of the opening flashback. These ideas are all present in the base film, but they're so sloppily implemented that they come off as boring and uninspired. With my suggested changes, I think that Darben could be a super awesome villain and not the bland AI generated one we were treated to. Alright, moving on to change 2. I would give each of the 3 leads a strong and definitive character arc. Well, more like 2.5, but you get the picture. Well, the base movie had loose semblances of an arc for each character. None of them ever get enough attention to feel remotely satisfying. I'll start with Carol or Captain Marvel. The arc that they were seemingly going for was to have her get past her imposter syndrome, embrace her humanity, and forgive herself for her mistakes. The issue with the base film's implementation is that these moments of guilt with Captain Marvel are so few and far between. Carol inadvertently destroys the planet's ecosystem. A whole Skrull planet almost gets completely killed off, with her only being able to save a handful of them. After the Skrull planet gets destroyed, Captain Marvel feels bad about it for what seems like 2 minutes before jumping into this goofy training montage where she and the other Marvels learn how to control their powers to the tune of Intergalactic. Instead of that, this movie should have used this event to build up Carol's imposter syndrome. Everyone needs to be drinking the Kool-Aid that Carol is a goddess except for herself. I would have liked to see something like this shot from Batman v Superman, maybe with the Skrulls or something. That way when she's unable to save people, when she's unable to stop Darben from stealing other planets' natural resources, the guilt can build naturally, and then her imposter syndrome can reach its limit. That way when Monica does have that conversation with Carol about being human, about being Carol, it will hit. It will land. During the last fight scene with Darben, Captain Marvel should have a conversation with her. Well, I mean, she kinda does, but Monica starts it like a parent telling their child to apologize, so it doesn't really work. Whether Carol is winning or losing the fight, she should use that newfound humanity and try to empathize with Darben, admitting her mistakes and apologize for it. This next one is an honorary change to the movie because it's kind of a big deal, but scrap the whole multiversal hole being blown into the sky. We've seen that plot like 47 times at this point, and no one is excited for it anymore. Just stop, Marvel. In the base movie, Captain Marvel revives the sun by herself, but it's almost like an afterthought, like, oh, I could have done that the whole time, I just didn't think about it. Like, what? Instead, have Carol and Darben work together to revive the Kree planet's dying sun, with Darben ultimately sacrificing herself at the end to restore her planet's ecosystem. I think that my version of the ending would be such a satisfying character arc for Carol, as it wouldn't be Captain Marvel that stops the bad guy through throwing punches and shooting light beams, but Carol who saves the day through a sincere conversation with the opposition and learning to embrace her humanity. But moving on from Carol, Miss Marvel / Kamala Khan should have an arc that is completely centered around Captain Marvel. Her introduction in this movie showcases just how much she likes Carol, with her having an imaginary sequence of them working together. This scene totally works as a setup for her realizing that Captain Marvel doesn't live up to her expectations. Throughout the movie, Carol falls significantly short of Kamala's expectations, yet she never shows any signs of that fangirl mentality wavering. Kamala starts the movie as a Captain Marvel superfan and ends the movie as a Captain Marvel superfan. I think it would be so much better if we see Kamala slowly coming to the understanding that the Captain Marvel she's been worshipping for years doesn't exist. At the end of the movie, Kamala should have a conversation with Carol about her not living up to her unrealistic standards. But it's okay because it made her realize that everyone, both good and bad, is human. Lastly, Monica Rambeau's arc in the base film was more to serve as Captain Marvel's character development, and I think that should stay the same here. Monica's beef with Captain Marvel is with that godlike facade she portrays. I think Monica helping Captain Marvel realize her humanity while also forgiving Carol for abandoning her as a child is a solid enough character arc for me, but would be greatly improved by the defined arcs of the other two leads. And finally, My third change is to turn the goofiness dial way down. Because while the movie is funny at times, it often compromises the integrity of the MCU to gain those laughs. For starters, Nick Fury is a doddering old fool in this movie. It's kind of like the difference between Boba Fett in Empire Strikes Back and then Return of the Jedi. Sure, it's funny to see Boba Fett scream like a 6-year-old girl, but he loses all coolness and credibility that he gained in the previous entry. I feel very similarly about Nick Fury in this movie. Every time he is on screen, he is just saying or doing the corniest crap imaginable. Under no circumstance did this movie convince me that Nick Fury had the competency to be the leader of a super secret organization, as he walked and talked like someone out of a nursing home than a genius level super spy. If this movie just made Nick Fury a serious character like he's been in the past, this issue would have been easily resolved. There is also this singing planet where the language is literally song, and it was just the dumbest crap ever and killed any intensity the movie had going for it. I like the idea of Captain Marvel entering into a marriage for political reasons, but it's hard to take that seriously when everyone is singing and dancing like they're in High School Musical, including Carol herself. We're all in this together. Just make a cool water planet. Like, how hard is it? And my jaw just hit the floor when the entire Saber crew gets evacuated off the ship by getting eaten by space cats. It was so incredibly stupid, and it felt straight out of an episode of Powerpuff Girls. Just have one of your 3 heroines use their special powers to save everyone. I mean, I don't know. Cut the scene before you decide on having space cats eat everyone and then cough them up like hairballs on the planet Earth. These superhero movies not taking things seriously is a larger problem with the MCU, but it is completely present here and just as distracting. Someone at Marvel Studios really needs to crank that comedy meter down. Alright, so those are the 3 big changes I would make to the Marvels to save the movie. Well, my fixes to this movie wouldn't make it a perfect film or even save it from being the box office disaster that it's become. It would salvage the quality of the film enough that it could restore some sort of credibility to the Marvel brand and leave longtime fans with something special. These are just my thoughts though, and maybe my changes would make this movie even worse than it already is. If you're one of the 5 people that actually watched this movie, what changes would you make? And if you didn't watch the movie, what did you think about my changes? And why didn't you see the movie yourself? My favorite part about making these videos is hearing what you guys have to say, so if you have an opinion you want to get off your chest, my comment section is a great place to do so. And if you like what you see here, please smash that subscribe button and join the Budster Brown squad. Other than that, it's been real, it's been fun, but it hasn't been real fun. Later.